it's not just controlling their behavior, but it's almost like you said, you're afraid that they're going to become one of those angry teens. It's also controlling their future destination. It's controlling the road that they're on so that they do end up as the good teenager or a respectable teenager. Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Responsible Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. This is your host, Becky Jennings. Today, I am super excited to tackle this listener question. This one I have struggled with tremendously in my own life, and it is near and dear to my heart. I have an incredibly strong-willed, an incredibly emotional older child, and I struggle deeply with the narrative of defiance and disrespect, and it is one of the hardest patterns and blocks and triggering subjects that I have had to deal with in my own life, and constantly have to check myself and my goals and my choices, because I don't know if there is something more triggering than a child acting aggressively back at you and pushing very harshly against a boundary. So I feel this question deeply in my soul, and I just wanted to let you know I'm very much so in the same boat as you. I'm very much so a work in progress on this topic, and I hope that what I share today can bring some awareness and some levity and just some direction to how to manage and handle these very, very, very challenging dynamics. Okay, so here is the question. I have a question about how to manage the level of disrespect my 7-year-old son shows us. Whenever we say to do something, he says no and does the complete opposite. When we enforce a boundary, he yells back and throws a huge fit. Sometimes he'll even cover his ears when we try to talk to him. I'm afraid we are losing control as parents and that he is on the path to becoming those angry teens you see on TV. I feel that. We try to validate his feelings, have talks with him about our values, and empathize with him, but we eventually crack, yell, and go back to being dictators. It becomes a no tornado, and it feels like everyone loses. What can I do to stop this pattern? Oh my gosh, do I feel this so incredibly strongly in my stomach. I feel the tension in my own chest. I have felt so many times that I also am on the no tornado, where it's just like once it gets going, there's no stopping it. And even if their request is totally normal, we're so triggered and so enraged that no just is our first answer. And it makes so much sense to just throw it out there. So I feel this so much. My strong willed child has done this a bazillion times. And I also hear your deep desire to do things to the letter, to be doing it right, to be making the right choices for you and your child. I can feel that, and I feel that you also have this really deep desire for collaboration and for just some ease in your house. Sometimes that takes over, and the desire to just be in control just can pop out just to get him to comply. So I understand that. I've been there, and I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that I see myself in you. And I know how hard it is. So I wanted to validate that experience for you. Some keywords that popped out to me. This is probably my favorite thing to do as a coach, is find the keywords, because the keywords are always the clues as to the route to go. The keywords are always the direction. So, some words that popped out to me were disrespect. Disrespect is a word that I've also had to wrestle with and figure out the root of why that word hits me the way it hits me and where it hits me, right? It feels like a gut punch for me. Like when I hear the word disrespect, it's like it brings back things from my childhood. Like I felt like I very much so had to follow a path of respect. And if I was disrespectful, I was not the child to ask for forgiveness after something. I was very much so the child who was always asking for permission because I was afraid to disrespect. It wasn't something that I felt was a option for me. So the disrespect thing, I feel that because I felt like I had to show my parents a great deal of respect. So when we think about the word disrespect, I want you to explore your beliefs on the hierarchy or the value of children. Are parents above children and children are below parents? Are parent and child, do they bring equal value to the household? And where do you feel, where are your beliefs on that with your child? Do you expect that whatever you say, they should do it? They should jump and comply the first time that you say something. So, how did it look in your household? What did respect look like for you as a child? If you were disrespectful to your parents, what did that look like? If you said no, were you met with a boundary, but it was held with compassion and empathy? Or were you met with punishment or a punitive measure? And when you're now parenting and you're experiencing those same triggers, are you remembering the punishments or are you linking that with an association of compassion, of holding a boundary gentle but firmly? So I want you to look at your association with the word disrespect and see how that plays when I say some of these words back to you. Where do you feel that in your body? And how can we start to maneuver and manipulate our belief systems around disrespect? Um, the other one that I saw was you mentioned, I just want to make sure I read it appropriately, is you said that we are losing control. It feels like we're losing control as parents. And I want to explore your relationship with control. So I am still a very actively recovering control freak, and I find that I control many aspects of my children's lives, positive and negative. Uh, it feels safe for me to be in the driver's seat of the decision making. And it sounds like that might be a little bit of it too. Like it's not just controlling their behavior, but it's almost like you said, you're afraid that they're going to become one of those angry teens. It's also controlling their future destination. It's controlling the road that they're on so that they do end up as the good teenager or a respectable teenager. So I'd like to explore more deeply with your relationship with control and see where we can find some ease and where we can let go of some of that control. You mentioned that your son was 7, and 7 years old is this tricky age. Like 6, 7, and 8 is where they start to get really defiant and push against boundaries and try to really find their voice and um, try to assert their personality. So, where can you let your son assert his personality and assert his control in his day to day, in his life? Could that be with his clothing? Could that be with the time that he starts his homework? Could it be, with the weekend activities or the music choices that he can listen to? So where can you work with him and collaborate with him to have him have more control so he is more apt to collaborate with you? Because if you're anything like me, for most of their life, it has been you have been the director of their choices. So now it's time to give them a little bit more fluidity in and motion in the decision making process. Um, I'd also be very curious to see when this conflict starts to happen and when this no tornado starts to really take effect, where, it's just one spiraling no after another. And I would be curious is to see how often you and your son, and if he has other siblings or your partners in, oh, you said we, so yes, the two of you, how often you're playing with your son, how often you guys are immersing yourself in his world, in his idea of play, in his games, in his brain, in his just flow. When we're in flow, we're very calm, we're very focused, we're engaged in what we're doing, but our kids experience the same thing. So where are you allowing your son to be in flow and you're just letting him guide you just to be there with him? So play is where our children's minds are the most open and most receptive. And that's when our kids' hearts are the most connected. And so I find that as parents, especially parents of strong willed children who are very bright and quick and able to push back so strongly, we're constantly upping the expectation of our kids to almost be like mini versions of us, like mini adults. And sometimes they are, which is confusing to us. Sometimes they come up with these brilliant things. Like a couple days ago, my son was talking about numbers and he said, somebody said, what's the biggest number? And he said, it's infinity. And the person said, well, infinity isn't a number. And my 6-year-old said, you're right. It's just a concept. And like, it's, it's crazy. Some of the stuff that they say that sounds so adult and yet they're children. And so those moments are so fleeting, yet we hold on to those as who they are and who they're becoming. And that can be very challenging to remember that it's our job to keep them in play. Play is where kids learn, where they attune to social expectations. Play is where they take risks and push boundaries and push themselves. Play is where they connect. Play is where they practice. Play is where they communicate, they test ideas. And so, whenever you find yourself in a very tricky situation, the first question you need to ask yourself is how much play have we put into today? Life removes us from play. As we get older, more and more play is taken out of our lives. And that's the process of becoming an adult, right? But there are so many, health things, right? So, say, for example, you have a not so healthy diagnosis from your doctor, and the first thing that they're going to say is that you need to get outside more and take a walk, you need to exercise and move your body, which is kind of the adult version of play, right? Being outside, movement, getting into that rhythmic state of being connected body and mind. And this is what it's like to be a child, being in constant movement and letting our body and mind speak to each other. That's where we learn. So you asked how to stop this pattern, and I had a no tornado moment with my son, and the next day I was dropping my younger one off at preschool, and I was just in thought and trying to see like what could be my like visual cue or my just reminder to stop and refocus my attention. And a school bus pulled up right in front of me, and it turned out, it opened up the stop sign and the red lights started flashing, and it said, "Stop when red lights are flashing." And I was like, well, thank you, universe, for that completely obvious visual for me. So The school bus, right? When we get frustrated and we get elevated, we see red. So if you can start to, when you want to stop that pattern, if you can just say school bus, or if you can see red lights flashing and you know that you have to stop and wait for the children's safety, right? Because we can't zip around the bus and just go on with our agenda. We have to stop and we have to wait for as long as it takes for the children to get out of the bus and get safely across the street. We have to wait and our agenda stops, right? When a school bus stops, our agenda stops. We might run late, we might be late to the next thing, but we have to stop for the child's safety. So how can you stop the pattern? We school bus stop. And then we focus on the acronym PLAY. So it starts with the pause. So the school bus helps you pause. And I find if you can stop yourself from the initial reaction that begets the no tornado, then we have more capacity to breathe into the moment, to shift our direction, to shift our focus, and to get back to the skills that we know help the situation versus reacting and putting all sorts of our own stuff and patterns and belief systems and shame and all of that we dump on to the scenario. L, the level, right? Your child's developmental level. Your child is between the ages of 6 and 8, which is the defiance factory producing time. Just so much defiance. They are finding their voice. They're finding their sense of self. They are seeing how much of them they can assert out into the world. So this is like a crazy pivotal time for them to start trusting their voice, to start trusting the connection with you, to start knowing that, yes, I'm going to push back against this boundary, but it's going to be held in a loving, compassionate way. And I can do this for the rest of my life. So by starting now, I just want to let you know your child is 7. You have so much time. You're in a great place starting now, starting these practices now. Your child will also be an angry teenager for sure, but most likely not one of those angry teenagers that you see on TV that is depicting like the worst case scenario, right? Our children will always be a version of an angry teenager. But the good news is that when you are consistent in these practices of using compassion and empathy and being there for them, that safety net for them to push back against your boundaries so that they know what to do in the future, I promise you, you are setting your child up for a very successful teenage existence. So understanding their developmental level and then just sinking into that acceptance. So P is pause. L, what level are they at? A, accept what is. Accept that you are in a stage where your child is learning defiance. Your child is learning their sense of self. They are figuring out how they fit in this world right now. Everything is becoming bigger, and you are the boundary that they are going to push against the most because you're the safest. So accepting that that is the part that you are in right now of their development. And then where can you find the yes? That is the why in play. Where can you find the yes? So I have a 6-year-old, and I like to offer him choices. Not, would you like this green shirt or the black shirt? But more like in scenario based, like if they want to watch an extra screen or like an extra episode, or if they want to stay at the park longer. So I say, this is how I offer the choice. If you choose to watch an extra episode, you are also choosing that we don't have time for 2 books tonight. If you choose to stay at the park longer, you are also choosing that we're not able to watch TV tonight. So letting them know, if you choose this, you are then choosing that. So it allows them to connect the dots as to their choices, and they have more control over how the flow of their day goes. So it's not like saying, hey, sorry, after the fact, you chose the park. We don't have time for TV anymore. You already put them in the driver's seat of that decision, and they were allowed to make that choice. They take a little bit of control over that, and that feels so good for them. Also, holding a firm boundary based in your family's values is huge. Based in your family's values. So, when they hold a boundary, as opposed to screaming, shouting, yelling, adding shame, and reinforcing a negative belief, you're saying what you just did. It was about you crossed a boundary at our family value of safety when you pushed your brother down the slide. We are no longer allowed to be at this park. Or you are going to sit down with me for the next few minutes while you calm down. However, you want to hold that boundary, hold it firmly with compassion, with an explanation. You don't need to go into the whole huge thing about how he always does this, or this is so like you. Or I'm not saying that you do this, I'm just maybe spitballing from my own experience. um, they already feel bad for what they've done, and so they don't need us to reinforce that badness. They just need us to hold that boundary compassionately but firmly. They're not going to like it. They're going to push back against that. They're going to say no. They're going to fight back. But what we have to do is say, I get it. I would be upset too. And I hear what you're saying. It is still a no, but I am here for you. It is still a no, but I'm going to support you through this experience. I still love you so much. What could we have done differently? What other choices could we have made that we could have kept playing instead of now sitting on the bench together? Letting them in to that part of the process gives them so much clarity and connects the dots in a way that doesn't fill them with shame and continues to solidify the story that they're a bad kid that could end up as that teenager down the road. What we are teaching them is to see how their choices have ramifications and consequences. And as the gentle parenting is kind of getting this woo wooey kind of negative connotation that there are no consequences. That is absolutely not correct. There are consequences when you cross a boundary. They're just logical and natural, right? You push somebody down a slide, well, you're not on the slide anymore. You throw a marker at somebody during art time, art's not happening anymore. These are instead of saying you threw a marker at somebody and now you're no longer watching TV. That's not logical. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. Um, And how can you show him that you are on his side? How can you find the yes? And I'd be curious to see how much time you two are spending just in play in his world, where he gets to choose whatever you do. He gets to choose for 5, 10 minutes a day. Anything he wants to play, you are fully on board and he's in control, and you're just hanging out and you're along for the ride and you're just in his world. That time of connection, of total engrossed focus on your child is just like rocket fuel for their secure attachment. I saw something a couple days ago that uh, it was like all your kids want is your eyes on them. They don't care about how big your house is or what kind of car you're driving or how many emails you have. All they want is for you to see them. So, how can you get in his world, get on his side, and see him? And then I would go out of my way to notice the good things. I mean, we're talking every little good thing and acknowledge it. Hey, I saw you just moved the water glass over to your brother for him. That was so nice of you. Thank you. I saw that you opened the door for somebody. That was amazing. When that person fell down, you asked if they were okay. I loved seeing that. Really hyping and noticing where your children show up positively and kindly not only reinforces that this gets really great attention from mom and dad, but it also helps you view your child as not just a constantly defiant and disobedient and disrespectful child,
because when we start to view our children through those labels and lenses, it can get very easy to find every confirmational bias of that behavior. So, with that, I would just suggest staying in play as much as possible with your child, finding goofy ways to engage in transitions, giving, if he's really engrossed in something, offering him a fun transition as opposed to just, hey, it's dinner time. Get off your iPad, or it's dinner time, stop playing. How can we find ways to support the transition, support the developmental age, support the pushback, and just be in play with him. Find fun ways to connect. And the other little tidbit is when you are about to have a discussion with him, because I was like notorious for the long life lesson. I would sit him down, take away all distractions, have him be eye level with me, and it never worked. I'd ask him to repeat what I said, and he'd go, I don't know. But if we want to have a meaningful, important conversation, have their body moving. So now we go for walks if we need to talk about something. We go outside and we put our feet in the pool and splash around. So whatever you can do to get their body moving when you really want to talk about something that matters to you and you feel like is necessary for them to learn that lesson, make sure that you have their body moving. Make sure it's in play, in art, in something that gets their mind going so that you have more success in that. The lesson clicks and is more positively associated. And the more connection you have is going to build that collaboration and that kindness and that gentleness in your household. Thank you so much for writing this question. I'm sure many parents out there are experiencing this as well. So know that you are not alone. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send me a direct message on Response Able Parenting on Instagram or on TikTok, or send me an email. And I so look forward to having a discussion with you again. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Response Able Parenting podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share the episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough. You are capable. You've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together.